Welcome, 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 and thank you for joining us today live or on the recording for episode 15 of Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy, keeping the flame alive in relationships. I can't express to you how much it means to me that you have taken time out of your busy day to join us and learn more about this topic. So thank you for being here. We are on social media, so please, we're out there on Facebook, YouTube, X, and those social media sites you see. We need 100 followers. If you're a Facebook person, please follow us because then we will be able to eventually stream live. And so please follow us if you're a Facebook person. If you go to the website, you can learn more about upcoming episodes. We have all these incredible guests coming, and I want you to see what's coming up and join us for all these experts that will be coming up. If you'd like to watch one of our past shows, you can do that on the website as well. It's all right there. You can get to your social media from that website too if you want to go through the website to Facebook, YouTube, whatever. But please go to the website. And also, you can listen to us from your car because we are on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, all your favorites. So listen to us in your car as well, and that is audio on those. If you want the video, go to the website. All are welcome. All are welcome here. I want you to make sure that you realize that you are most welcome, whatever your sexual orientation, whatever your gender identity, or your relationship style. I'm so glad you're here and you are most welcome. The goal of the podcast is pretty simple. It's just to empower and enlighten you with evidence-based scientific information that you need, that it's so hard sometimes to find about sex and intimacy, but that you need to improve your sexual health and to deepen your relationship with your loved one. So this is a good one. I hope if you have your partner there, cuddle up together, please. Get in a cuddled position so you can listen to our amazing podcast this evening because it's all about you and relationships and keeping a flame alive. Today we're going to talk about something that many of us crave. We all desperately want deep, meaningful relationships where we feel seen and valued. And yet, we are most fearful of the vulnerability that comes with that kind of relationship. Relationships, especially those that span years or decades, are not something we simply fall into and coast through. I've been married 39 years this month, coming up pretty quickly as our 39th anniversary this month. And so you don't just fall into it and it's all great and just let it ride along coast. They require energy. They require attention and intention. Passion doesn't fade because something's wrong. It really fades when we stop nurturing the connection that's brought us together in the first place. In the hustle of daily life, work, family, responsibilities, intimacy often gets pushed to the background. But here's the truth. Sustaining desire and deep emotional closeness, it isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up and being present for each other in small and consistent ways. It's like the twinkle lights that light up a room, all those little ways that you consistently choose love and choose the relationship. So whether you're newly partnered, or whether you've been together like my wife and I for decades, and I know Vic has been married, who's behind the scenes here for many years as well. So either way, cuddle up together, get comfortable if you're by yourself, and visualize that amazing, miraculous partner that you have as we dive into this topic this evening. I am so excited that our guest is here. She was going to join us, you might have known in the past, but there was a little bit of an emergency that happened that day and she couldn't. But true to her word, she is here tonight. I am so happy to have her because she's an amazing expert. Dr. Jennifer Littner is a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified sex therapist. She is a leading expert in sexual health and relationships. She specializes in helping individuals and couples improve sexual functioning, addressing intimacy issues, and to navigate life transitions related to sexuality. Dr. Littner also conducts research on sexuality education and relationship satisfaction. She is the founder of Embrace Sexual Wellness, a Chicago based center, and she is a published author and speaker as well. She is an amazing expert on relationships, and I am so glad she is here with us this evening. So, welcome, Dr. Jennifer Littner.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Dr. Jeff.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here to share your expertise. We have shared patients over the years, and we've been to a lot of conferences together, and I really wanted to have you on. And so thanks for being here and helping people understand more about relationships. I know you've done some work about keeping relationships alive as in particular, but let's talk about some things.
Yeah, let's do it. Where do you want to start?
I want to start with whatever you'd like to share with people. I know that our listeners are ready to hear about relationships and what you think enhances and improves them. You heard me say a few things in the beginning, but you work with couples all the time. So wherever you'd like to start, let's go.
Well, I think one thing to talk about first is just building upon what you shared, clearing up some of the myths about keeping the flame alive, because I think what a lot of people go into relationships so unprepared for what to expect, even if you have the best intentions and the best education you could possibly have. I find that even so many people, they find themselves feeling stuck and just wishing they had a little bit more guidance. And a lot of that goes back to the expectations that they're having. And so something I like to talk about with a lot of couples I work with, once I understand, their background, is, what are their expectations and what kind of myths need to be cleared up. One of those things is about this idea that desire is something that we're going to have, and it's going to happen pretty spontaneously throughout our lives. And we don't really have to do much for that to happen, right? Like you were talking about how relationships do require not just attention, but intention. And one of the things that we know is that long-term desire often isn't spontaneous. It's more responsive. Responsive desire is this kind of term that refers to the right conditions being met and desire happening in response to that. Emily Nagoski has a book called Come As You Are. She's done kind of a famous for having research on this topic. She's also written another book called Come Together. It's very popular for a lot of in the sex therapy world, but a lot of the research shows that we need to not only just show up and love our partners and be present, we have to really create the right conditions in order for that desire to be present. So things like our emotional connection, our sense of personal safety, novelty, space, curiosity, where we are, our mood, all of these things are factors that can impact our desire. And if you think about it, that makes total sense, right? If you're, let's say you go out for a romantic dinner, you and your partner are having a special evening together, and you come home and you're thinking it's going to be a really, fun sexual time, but then somebody gets food poisoning. That's not the best, it totally interrupted that experience and that context there. So I think that's something that's really, really powerful to think about. It's just that, sometimes even when something would be spontaneous isn't, because there are other contexts that get in the way. Like-minded for partners who are really busy professionals and they are working a ton, really making space to connect and slow down and focus on each other can feel like a really hard thing to do when you are in long-term relationship and you have a lot going on. And so scheduling sex is something that you hear a lot of sex therapists talk about, just to really help couples get on the same page and make space for that. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about, is that, sometimes desire isn't spontaneous the way that we often see it in the movies, or even in erotica, frankly.
I think it's such a good point. And, we have talked a little bit about this on previous podcasts with Dr. Barry McCarthy and some others, that spontaneous versus responsive desire. And I think that's really important for people to understand that for some of us, it begins with that emotional engagement, Bassan's model, where it kind of starts with getting each other and connecting with each other, and that the desire builds out of that emotional connectivity or intimacy. So I think that's a really good point. I also love what you bring up about expectations, because I think that's such a huge thing with my patients. it's like we come to believe it should or it has to be this very particular thing. And it's sort of this perfect picture of what you might think it should be. And then when it's not, it can be frustrating and upsetting.
For sure. And, something I think about too with even the topic of tonight of like keeping the flame alive, so many people talk about the spark. I want to go back. I want to recreate the spark, reignite the spark. And that spark that most people develop early on in like what we would call new relationship energy, which is that first like 9 to 12 months of a relationship usually, it's based on high degree of novelty, projection, and mystery. And when you know somebody so well, as a lot of long-term partners do, there's not as much novelty, projection, and mystery. And so we're actually looking at what sustains desire over time is really looking more at shared meaning and growth and this erotic discovery, meaning this commitment to discovering erotically together, and not it being a spark that we're going backwards for, but rather like looking at a flame that changes. And so it's less thinking it as like a loss, but more of like an evolution. How are two people or three, however many people in the relationship going to show up and nurture this flame together? Because like you said, if you don't maintain it, it likely will die down or become less abundant. And, recognizing that spark, we're not going to go backwards, but we could go forwards, and here are some things that we can do to help get us there.
I think that fire is a great analogy because you got to feed a fire. A fire is going to go out if you don't take care of it and foster it and nurture it, right? So it's that flame or fire is a good way to think about it, because with the relationship too, if you don't put another log on, if you don't stoke it, if you don't do the different things, right, it's going to extinguish, right?
Yeah, and you can't, like, you don't want to, I think a lot of people are surprised, right? That they're like, oh, I checked out, right? Or I was working hard to provide for my family, and that felt like a good decision. And yeah, like it might have been aligned with your values. It might have been really important, but also you checked out of tending to your fire. And when you check out from tending to your fire, what do you expect is going to happen? And I think that's the piece in the education that I wish more people took away, especially folks who, if you're watching and you're raising teenagers and, you're trying to teach them about lessons on love, or you are a person who's 18 to 25 and you're kind of starting to really develop more relationships and you're watching this. I think it's something that's good to kind of get ahead of before you're in the trenches.
And I think too, you kind of alluded to a little, and I always think of the love languages that someone, because their primary love language is what they're thinking of, so they're using that language with their partner, but that's not really exactly what that partner wants or needs. They're like, well, I do things for her all the time, but the things that are being done aren't the most important valued things. They need you to show up in this way rather than that way. So I try to unpack that with my couples too. It's like, let's think about what your partner wants, what their love language is, or what they really want and desperately need from you, and how you could give them that.
Absolutely. I think.
Uh-oh. Well, there we go. You're back. We lost you for a second.
I think this is where it's really good to get clear and communicate about, what is the way that you feel most connected in relationship, and whether that maps on to the phrasing of love languages or it's something different that, phrasing that you've created. I think it's really important. And also, really using your own humility when you're sitting with your partner and your partner is saying, hey, actually, like, I really need you to bring me home some flowers from the store or a little box of chocolates, because that is the way that I'm going to know that you care about me, when the person who's hearing that never, ever gave or received a gift in their whole life, right? Like sometimes it's about stepping outside of our own comfort zone to take in the feedback from our partners about what helps them feel most cared for. And that can be hard, I think, for a lot of people.
Because it can feel a little bit like criticism, right? If if they're telling you this is kind of what I need, this is what I want. But if you have that curiosity and you say, what a fun conversation to have. Don't you think that's a great conversation for them to have? What is it? What really makes you happy that I could do for you or give you? just a simple thing on a daily basis that would really make you happy. What do you really need from me? What is it you really need from me? And then to be really receptive and not become defensive, right? Which is hard. All of us struggle with those things, and it can be challenging. But yeah, I think it could be a fun conversation discovering what your partner really needs. What I try to do is then I have the couples now, in your words, what after you've heard everything from your partner, what tell your partner what you believe they want and need from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Oh,
smart. It's a good, paraphrasing and active listening exercise. Old adage from couples therapy. And, one of the things I hear a lot, and I think is a challenge with this, is this idea of like a fixed personality traits, like this idea that we are the way we are, right? I'm a person who is a morning person. I'm never not going to be a morning person, something like that, right? So somebody who says, oh, I'm just not touchy-feely, this is who I am, and they're partnered with somebody who's just so hungry. It's like skin hunger is a big thing for them, right? They need a sense of connection. And skin hunger, for those who are not familiar, is this term that really comes from the intimacy and bonding that happens between infancy and their parents, but also, over humans throughout the course of our lives, where we often need a sense of touch to really develop this healthy sense of attachment, security, and connection. And so, this is very true where some partners really need that sense of connection through touch. And, if you're partnered with someone who's just not a touchy-feely person and you're saying, well, this is who I am, right? I'm not going to change. Right? There's sort of that inflexibility, I think, is what often leads people to feel as stuck as they can be here. So just wanted to name that too.
because maybe, and don't you think sometimes, Dr. Littner, that it's like, but then they're not accepting me for who I am, because that's who I am, is I'm not this touchy-feely person. But it's like you can also move out of your comfort zone a little bit and meet in the middle. Maybe you're not going to be this person who's like all over that person or whatever, right? But you could build into your own repertoire of love play and work with your partner that you do touch the small of their back, or you do come up from behind and hug them. There's things that you can do. But then I think sometimes, like I said, people think, well, but then are they really accepting me for who I am? So yeah, it can be a struggle.
Definitely. And I find that what's on the other side of this, the kind of fixed personality, the fact that this is who I am, I'm not going to change, is this fear of trying something new and failing. I work with so many people around performance anxiety too. And tonight we're talking more about the flame in long-term desire. But, I think one of the things that happens is, if I'm someone who's not touchy-feely and you're asking me to be touchy-feely, I have to step out of my comfort zone, try something new, and I'm afraid that it's not going to land, or I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to do this well enough, and that's too scary, so I will avoid doing that. And that's a big phenomenon that I have to work with a lot of people on, because, just like anything that is rewarding that we're going to learn, we have to step into outside of our comfort zone in order to be on that edge of growth. And it takes some courage. It definitely does.
Yeah, it does. And so sometimes we'll talk about more specific things, and even we've gotten into foreplay, and we laugh because I've had several people say, well, foreplay would be, I always clean up the kitchen and do all those things, and foreplay would be doing the dishes and all that kind of things, and that would free me up to feel more sexual and want to be more sexual. So sometimes what you have in your head of foreplay would be may not be what your partner has in their head. But is it doable? Yes. If I do the dishes, that means she's going to feel, or he's going to feel more sensual and sexual. That's doable,
Absolutely. And I think, one of the things I talk a lot about foreplay is it's everything that happens from the last sexual encounter to the next one. And most of it is not actually all that sexual at all. For some people, it is the dishes. For some people, it's those tiny moments of emotional connection. one of the things that I really recommend for couples in long-term relationships is developing rituals of connection. And I don't care what you call it, if it's a pleasure date, if it's, you have a funny name for it, if you put a heart on your Google Calendar, whatever it is, it's just an opportunity for you to have tiny moments where you're going to intentionally connect, a 6-second kiss, moments where you're really focused on eye contact, cuddling in the mornings, anything that's going to build erotic tension over time that you can do almost daily to help build on that is going to be really important, because it's often, when we play the long game, it's actually the smaller gestures that are way more impactful than the larger grand gestures. The really big surprise vacation or the diamonds or the sports car, whatever. Like, those are amazing, but that's not going to sustain that erotic connection for the long haul.
It's such a good thing. And I think of one example. I remember this couple who he's like, I do everything for her. I bought her a car and I did this. And she's just like, but you're mean to me and disrespectful. And you talk to me in a condescending, bad way. And so a car doesn't fix that. I need you to be loving and respectful towards me and not feel demeaned, right? So I think you're so right about that. It's like, save the money on the car and work on being loving, kind, and respectful. But that can be hard, right? Because we live with this person, and sometimes the people we live with bear the brunt of our stress and our trauma.
Totally. It is hard. And I think, the thing that I always talk about is this idea of emotional safety, right? If we want to be playing with the erotica or erotic risks, we have to think about safety as like the foreground for that. And so when we talk about long-term passion, we need that trust, we need that emotional safety. And so that means being emotionally responsive. That means being thoughtful with our partners and treating them with respect and all of that. And I think that often people don't really make that connection, because when they think about sex, they think about like the actions and behaviors related to sex, and not so much these sort of things that we are doing, but they're often less tangible. They're not like taking out the lube and the vibrator. It's, making dinner and saying, hey, honey, how was your day? And I love you and I appreciate you and you're doing a really good job. And I know this is stressful and, yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, and even you stopped on the way home and, oh, I got your favorite ice cream, or I did what, it's that the thoughts contain them. I always say, that I have to think of my wife in every circumstance, even the most basic things. And I always use the example of the bathroom. Where's the seat when I'm done? Is there any messes? Is there anything that I need to deal with? This is a huge deal when male and females are partnered together, and maybe males and males and females and females. It's like, nobody wants to step into your mess, whatever that mess is, whether it's the sink that you both share that you don't want to look in and see whatever, toothpaste or whatever. So I think it's really all those little choices throughout the day that you choose love, that you are conscious of your partner, that they're seen and heard even when they're not present with you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think there's so many examples that are coming to mind, not only from my own relationship, but from couples I've worked with over the years. And, when people have to be responsible for their partner, that's when burdens and this idea of like being a parent and being parentified, it really becomes a wedge, and it can be very unsexy to feel like you have to take care of your partner in a way when they're very able to do the necessary things they need to do. And so I think that can create a kind of over-functioning, under-functioning dynamic in relationships, and it can definitely lead to not so sexy context, for lack of better words. So, when partners are feeling really secure and they're being responsive to each other, they're way more likely to be able to be playful and adventurous and expressive and engage in those kinds of things that, like we were talking about with the rituals and playing with erotica and things that help keep that flame alive.
Definitely. I have one. Can we put the first question in there, Vic? And I will feed that to her. When couples say, and I know you've had patients too, it's like we're roommates, they say when they feel more like roommates. So I love this question, than romantic partners. What are some small but meaningful ways they can begin to reconnect emotionally and physically when they've sort of living parallel lives, roommate type lives?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, recognizing where are they not showing up in the relationship, because they probably know, maybe where they are, and they'll, come in and say, okay, I'm doing X, Y, Z, but where are the gaps that I could be more present in, and taking accountability for their own roles in that. And that doesn't mean pointing out where your partner is missing the mark, but pointing out where you are missing the mark and your partner doing the same thing. And then from there, that's where I think we can talk about making space for erotic energy in your everyday life. So that might mean scheduling time for the two of y'all, or two plus of y'all, to be able to get together and make intimacy a priority. And it could be, flirting, teasing, sexting, playful touches throughout the day. Really prime your body and your mind to kind of put sex and intimacy on the brain, because whatever led you to the roommate-ship meant that was not on the brain, right? Something else was there. And so, this really means that we need to not, encourage partners not to wait for the perfect moment until things are going to feel ready to have sex again, but rather make these micro moments throughout our week and prioritize that time. So those are some of the things that I walk couples down when we are doing this work.
Definitely. I know one of my couples, he said he's like, my husband was used to sex is always a big deal for me. I'm so into it. And, we have this wonderful thing and it's really great. And just like everything I used to like, I don't know why, but I don't really like it now. And so his husband was like, what's going on here? Is there somebody else? What is happening here? And it's just like, no, I just kind of, he felt like he kind of needed to take a little step back and rethink what sex and intimacy should be now, because what it used to be didn't feel like what he wanted. So it can be challenging.
For sure. And I think what you're talking about happens a lot, and people are also caught off guard by it. Most commonly, I see this around times of transition. So whether somebody's going through gender or social transition, whether going through transition of becoming empty nesters, the transition to parenthood, andropause, menopause, new acquisition of medical or chronic illness. These are times when our sex life often gets shaken up a little bit and something changes and we evolve, and approaching it through the lens of evolution, meaning something's changing and we're welcoming that and just trying to kind of figure out what could be next for us to discover, is going to be far more healthier than fighting it and protesting it, which a lot of people do because we're so attached to what we know. And then all of a sudden we wake up and we're like, how come when I do this and I do ABC, this doesn't, yield an orgasm anymore? And I'm like, well, sometimes our, bodies change and things, we have to adjust. And that inflexibility can be hard. Like, it's really hard to be flexible with that. You've known your body a certain way for so long, we get comfortable with it.
Right. And patients have even said, I feel like a foreigner in my own body. It's like, I know it's hard for my partner, but it's hard for me too. And I think about what you just said too. And I think if we approach it together with curiosity and fun and play, which play is so important, how fun to think, what's next for us? Maybe something really different and exciting. It was always, I touch you here, and you touch me there. We do this, we do that. Everybody's good. Are we done? Now it's like, let's discover, wow, I never knew this spot behind my ear that makes me crazy or whatever, So I think discovering that can be so much fun.
Yeah. I've had partners have really erotic experiences with, I would say, like non-genital orgasms, right? And this is something that's a whole nother interview conversation for a different podcast episode. But there's all kinds of, our bodies are filled with all kinds of sensory zones that we are often not familiar with, because so much of our lives is not, we're not connecting to those parts of us, we're helping meet with a couple, or we're doing our accountancy or whatever we're doing during the day, but sending emails, we're not like noticing, oh, it feels really nice, this tingly spot on my back. We're probably noticing, oh, I'm staring at a computer all day, my neck hurts, right? Like, it's our frame of reference is often not one of pleasure with our day-to-day lives in this way. And so I think that also complicates things.
Definitely. I have another question. I think it's a good one. This couple, they had to use a surrogate. It was two men, and they were now their parents. They're so excited, but and then now the children are getting a little older. They're getting a little older, and it's impacting intimacy. And so, how can couples adapt to stay connected through life's transitions?
So I think this is where I think about like, the whole, like all the different people and areas on the treatment team, right? Like there's, certainly on the medical side with andropause and menopause and things like that, like, getting some, if you need some good HRT, like not being afraid to talk to your urologist or gynecologist about those kinds of things, because that can make a huge difference in restoring tissues and helping with everything functionally well, but it's like the social piece of it and the emotional piece, which is, really more my lens. I would say that, aging really can create a lot of opportunity, but also a lot of change, right? Sometimes people notice that their joints are feeling sore, or the positions they used to be in sexually feel challenging. And so this is a really good time, if you don't already have like wedge pillows, or, I've had people really well with like swings of sorts, like, attached to their homes, and just making things easier to get into, because you shouldn't have to blame your body for you not being able to access pleasure. There are so many devices that can be made to help you. The sex toy industry, amazing. There's so many different types of toys that can be helpful. So I think if you're somebody who, has never used a toy, or maybe you could benefit from learning about something else that could be helpful, maybe you need more stimulation, maybe you need less than you used to. Maybe you've got arthritis, and so having your partner, helping you out in terms of, washing your hands or helping wash up, those kinds of things. Like these things can be helpful. And so maintaining flexibility, and also, being a little bit creative can be useful, and addressing whatever the challenges are that are coming your way. Parenting is a whole conversation. I think there's a whole piece of that. But if, with empty nesters, it's like, we have so much time on our hands. What was it like to be together again? You kind of feel like you're, back together for the first time if you met before you had kids. And I with a lot of couples I work with young children, it's how do we have the energy to have sex, and then for anywhere that's in between, it's how do we have the privacy to have sex. So there's like different challenges that I think parenting does bring up for folks, but it's not impossible. It just requires a little bit more intentionality and creativity than it does when you might be a child.
I totally hear what you're saying. And, we always say with people with young kids, I've had people say the shower became their really good friend, because it's a great place to have a little privacy, or nap time became their intimate time, and you got to be creative and roll with it. So I think it can be challenging at all the different stages for sure. And then sometimes when the empty nesting happens, I certainly see couples, I know you do too. It's like, gosh, we've invested all our energy in this, and now here we are. I don't even know you anymore that well, right?
Right. And so this is where I think communication is really important too, because a lot of times when I see couples, they often have they're kind of entrenched in what they would say is like a problem, right? So they've been disconnected for quite some time, and that's a big issue for them, because they are not even able to have a conversation about sex. And so they think the thing that we really need to encourage partners to do is, even if you're not, the quality of your sexual relationship isn't where you want it to be, or the frequency isn't, the worst thing you can actually do is stop talking about sex and stop connecting. Because once that starts, then you kind of settle into this pattern of just more distant disconnection. And so helping partners develop ways to talk about the way that sex is changing, whether it be through life transitions or aging, or a dilemma that they're having, finding ways to communicate with in non-defensive ways, and normalizing talking about your desires. And even if you can't have sex as often, the idea of maintaining that agency around talking about it is really, really important.
And then too, I think that like Gottman, we've talked about that on the show before, and their foundation to the whole relationship is the friendship. So it's building that relationship outside of the sex and intimacy, which directly overflows and bleeds into the sex and intimacy. So it's all about how you interact, the way you interact. My wife sometimes will be like, it's not, I'll be like, why were you upset with that? And she's like, well, it's the way you said it, not what you said. And it's like, and that can be so true. So
Yeah.
our tone, our gestures, so many little things can be so important. So this question I thought was a good one along those lines. What does it really mean? We talked about investing in your relationship. And what are a few tangible things partners can start doing today to reignite their connection, that relationship, that friendship?
So I think of investment as, you're taking something that's precious to you and putting it in the hands of somebody you trust, right? So when you make an investment financially, you're investing in probably some stocks, right, that you hope are going to give you a good ROI. When you're investing in hiring someone, you're hoping that they're going to help me, perform well as a team member. When you're investing in your relationship, you are trusting your partner with your time, your energy, your emotional, physical, spiritual intimacy, and your sense of self. And I think that is something that is really important. And I think the tangible things that people can do to help reignite their connection, really focusing on novelty. Our brains really crave novelty, like I mentioned, with the new relationship energy and how that spark started in the first place. And so, that is often true sexually. And I think people get a little stuck, like, okay, well, where do I start? Like, are you telling me to have sex swinging from the rooftops? Like, what do you want me to do here? And they start thinking about the wildest things possible. And it doesn't mean that you need to have, some wild, or go into costume or something like that. If that's your thing, go for it. But often it's like little things like, trying a new location. If you're used to having sex in the shower, could you, try having sex, on a sofa or something like that, or in a chair, or trying a different time of day. Engaging in fantasy can be really powerful. So, I have couples play with different dynamics that feel exciting to them, whether it be power or this idea of play and I think that's customizable based on the partner. So, some people really love the idea of their partner being more directive with them and telling them what to do. Other people really get resistant to that. So, finding like what is the thing that's going to be exciting there, and then using your erotic imagination and exercising that. So I often recommend partners read erotica or listen to erotica together. Something out that they listen to, that they want their partner to listen to, and see like they can discuss it or share it as part of like their sexual repertoire. So I think there's a lot of power with novelty. And then I also mentioned those like rituals for connection and really trying to make deposits that way. So those are things like we mentioned, like the kissing, the eye contact, the cuddling, the those pleasure dates. Those are all things that are investments in addition to spending quality time together.
And all those things are science based because, things like the novelty raises dopamine levels. Cuddling, kissing, eye gazing raises dopamine levels. So when was the last time? I remember when my wife and I first were dating and stuff. Sometimes we just sit and stare into each other's eyes and things like that. And now I know, wow, that builds dopamine, which is a powerful central nervous system neurotransmitter that makes us want to cuddle more, makes us want to have a more meaningful relationship. So, and then you talked about erotica, reading, listening. So bibliotherapy, again, these are scientifically proven things. It's like Dr. Littner and I don't just pull them out of nowhere. They're things that we use, things that we have learned from science. They work. And so I think all those things are great suggestions, definitely. I also think when I think about investing, I think we have, a lot of energy and a lot of things in our life, but it is somewhat finite. What do we choose to invest in?
Yeah.
What are our intentions? And to me, what could be more important? What could be a greater, more wonderful investment than yourself and your loving relationships? To me, I can't think of anything more important to invest in than those. So when you're thinking about what should I do with my time and your job is making you crazy and all the different things and you bring it home and you're like, I want to go. Stop and breathe, because your partner deserves the best that you are and you deserve the best that you are. Why did you bring your boss home with you, or whoever home with you, or your patient, or whatever that you're upset about? It's hard not to carry those things. But I think, what could be more important than investing in yourself and your loving relationships?
I love that. And I think it's a really important reframe, right? Because I think a lot of us we're just downloading what we're carrying from the day and onto our partners. It's like they're a springboard that's kind of bouncing off of, and rightfully so. Like, a lot of us are trying to, reconnect. And that's one way we do that is we ask how each other are. But, once you've gotten through all the things that have been difficult or that have happened in your day, it's like, okay, well, do you want to just perseverate on that, or do you want to shift the energy into something else? And I think this is where, we can be intentional about that. And it's okay to rely on outside resources like the evidence-based or science-backed tools that I mentioned. I think sometimes, if you need a questions card game to kind of go through, and or you want to watch a film together or a documentary, or you want to play a game, like these are all, it's okay to rely on something else. You don't have to just be creative all the time, especially if it's the end of a day and you're fatigued. Like maybe cuddling before bed for 10 minutes is really all you have to give to each other, but it's still better than not, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's also important, is like working within your bandwidth and, allowing yourself to utilize external help if you need it.
And too, like you said, and sometimes the partner does need to come home from work and just vent, or whatever it is, or they're upset about something with the family or whatever it is. And what a great gift you give your partner when you can sit with those emotions and just listen, not try to fix it, not try to make it right. And it took me a long time to learn that in my personal life, because as healthcare providers and as a man, I want to fix things.
Yeah.
And so often what my partner needs from me, I found, and what I find with the couples and the groups of people that I work with in loving relationships in my practice as well, is we just want somebody to listen. We want to blow off a little steam and just have somebody just be present and listen and sit with those emotions with us. That's powerful.
Absolutely. Emotional responsiveness is one of the most important ingredients for intimacy. And I don't think people give that enough credit. It's not just about sitting there and nodding, but really showing your partner that you are receiving what they're sharing and helping validate. And, it's not your job to always fix things. Sometimes people do want your help to fix things, but more often they just might want to know that you are sitting in the same place with them, or that you see them and that you care about them.
Definitely. Good, powerful information. Well, I'd like to give you a chance to share anything else you'd like to finish up by sharing before we go to our closing, because we're going to do it. We always end with a centering exercise. But before we do that, you were just such a wealth of knowledge. You've worked with so many couples. What else? Is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners today about relationships, keeping the flame alive?
I think one of the things that I would encourage couples to keep in mind is that, it's okay if you find yourself feeling stuck in your relationship, whether it be around keeping the flame alive, or feeling stuck around navigating, having different levels of desire. These are very common issues that many people experience. And if you are finding yourself feeling stuck, that just to know that relationships and therapists are well trained to support you, and not to feel afraid of consulting with them, because I think there's in the past have been quite a bit of stigma around it. But it's also very powerful work. And if you are experiencing challenges and you reach out sooner rather than later, it's the time that does help people really develop better outcomes as far as healing and fixing the issues that are going on. So my lasting tip is more of like a permission offering, that like if you are feeling stuck, to know that it's okay that that's where you may be, and let's help you get back on track, and not to rule out therapy as an option, and finding someone that you really feel can be a good fit to help you, because that's such an important thing. And it doesn't mean your relationship is broken. Better to fix it, help you get some support before it gets too late.
I did just put in the chat American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. If you're looking for a therapist, that's a place to go. And so I know that's one place that you can find. You just go to find a provider on there. So I just put that in the chat as well. That's aasect.org if you're looking for a therapist. But it's been such a wonderful thing to have you on the show. I hope you'll come back because we came up with a couple really good topics just while we were talking. So I would love to have you back sometime to talk more and share your expertise. It's that time when I'm going to go to my, so you can just, we're going to go to my closing centering exercise as we do. Okay, I know it was a lot of information. You can continue cuddling with your partner, but let's take a few minutes to just ground ourselves and return to intention. If you're able, settle into a comfortable position with your partner or alone. Close your eyes gently, soften your gaze if you prefer. Let your hands rest where they feel most at ease. They can be on your lap or at your side, wherever they feel comfortable. Begin a slow, deep breathing pattern through your nose. Inhale a couple counts and exhale through your mouth. Gently exhaling and releasing. As you're exhaling, after that big inhale for 4 or 5 counts, as you exhale slowly for several counts, let your shoulders drop. Your jaw, let your jaw unclench. Let it go. Let it go. Maybe the tension between your eyebrows. Let go of whatever tension you're holding on to in your chest, in your belly, in your back, in your pelvic floor. As you exhale, release that tension. Now bring your partner or someone you love into your awareness. Picture their face, their laughter, the way they feel in your arms. Notice what arises in your body as you think of them. Now silently or softly, repeat these affirmations to yourself or softly. These affirmations, they're already formed. Why is it so easy for me to connect with love and intention? Why is it so easy for me to connect with love and intention? Why do I feel more seen and supported within my relationship every day? Why is my relationship worth the energy that I give to it? Why does love and being loved feel safe and joyful? Let these words ripple through your body. Let them root into the places that they're needed most. Return to your breath. Inhale love. Exhale presence. Take one more breath in, and as you exhale, bring a soft smile to your face. When you're ready, gently open your eyes. Carry this sense of warmth and connection with you into your relationship, the rest of your evening, your day, wherever you are, and into your heart. I thank you so much for joining us this evening. I thank Dr. Littner for her wonderful expertise. And Vic, can you tell us what's coming up next week before we finish out?
This week, men's sexual health expert Dr. Alan Schindel joins Dr. Jeff to discuss the diagnosis and treatment of ejaculatory disorders in men. These conditions, including premature ejaculation, delayed ejaculation, retrograde ejaculation, hematospermia, and anejaculation, can significantly impact sexual health and overall well-being. Dr. Schindel will break down the latest psychological, behavioral, and pharmacological treatment approaches available today. While no medication has received FDA approval for the treatment of premature ejaculation, several off-label options exist. Join us April 22nd to learn more.
That was pretty funny with the guy putting his hand over his private parts and saying help. But okay. But anyway, it's going to be a great episode. I love Dr. Alan Shindell. He is amazing. He is just a wealth of information, especially he has published and done so much work around all orgasm disorders, premature ejaculation, delayed ejaculation. So it should be a great episode. Gosh, thank you so much, Dr. Jennifer Littner, for joining me today. It was a treat just to see you again because I don't get to see you that often. And thank you for sharing your expertise.
Of course. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure of mine.
We appreciate each and every one of you out there, and we hope this has been informative and helpful to you, to all of you. And please join us next week, and have a blessed one.